Hi, everyone. Welcome to the sermon tonight, and I hope that you will enjoy it. We're gonna be in Second Chronicles, and it's gonna be chapter 13. And I encourage you to go to that if you ever get the chance. And it's a great, interesting book. And I'm in actually First Kings right now, and I learned a lot from reading these books, mostly going through my research, doing Bible studies from our church. I learned so much. I grew up in the Bible, don't get me wrong, all my life. I've been in church pretty much all my life since I was 2 years old, and I'm almost in my 40s. So I've been in church pretty much all my life. And from Sunday school and all that, it was great. But man, when you go through Bible studies and you learn from other people and you just do your own research, you'd be surprised like, wow, my Sunday school teacher didn't go as depth as what I'm learning now. So it's amazing how I learned from a lot of great people, but it's amazing when you can dig for yourself and do your research and learn from others that are really deep in the Bible. It blows your mind how much you learn and how much you thought you knew everything. Kind of found out you're like, wow, I knew a lot, but there's a lot more I didn't know either about certain things. So tonight we're gonna talk about a king named Adonijah. He was the king of Judah. And maybe some of y'all heard about him, and some of you like, I never heard about this king of Judah. Who is this guy Adonijah? You'd be surprised how much people don't know about this king because he's not as famous as or well known as King Solomon or Jehoshaphat or King David. Those names are just like, probably if you're a Bible student, you will probably, or you have some knowledge of the Bible, you'd be like, oh wow, I know those guys. But who is him? So that's what I like about him too. Is a good story to learn, but he's one of those that most people probably don't know about. So if you know about him or not, you're gonna learn about some things tonight. Now I want to give a little history. What happened in Second Chronicles chapter 13? What lead up to this part of the Bible? Well, what happened was when King Saul died and King David took over, set up a great kingdom. He had many wars, and he wanted to build a temple for God. And God's like, David, you have too much blood on your hands. I want my temple to be built in a certain way. He says, your son Solomon, or a son from you, is going to be, we knew it was King Solomon, but he's going to be born, and he's going to be a man of peace. He's not going to have any war. I'm going to give him peace around the nations that surround Israel, his neighbors. I'll give him peace. And he's going to build a temple in my name. So God made the promise to King David. So to make the long story short, David dies, King Solomon takes over, but Solomon did not follow the Lord. He was going great at the beginning, or a good while, but at the end of his life, he started marrying a bunch of women that was not of the Jewish faith, and they kind of encouraged him to worship their gods. And so he started worshiping gods, and he got into some things, and sadly he backslid. Some people say he came back to the Lord later on in his life. Some say he didn't, but that's something that's up for debate. But anyway, at that time he went away from God for sure. And God said, I will judge you. I will divide the nation because of what you've done. And when Solomon died, his son took over, but his son was stupid. His son did not use wisdom like his father did. He pretty much, he was taxing, King Solomon's son was taxing the northern kingdom of Israel heavily, and King Solomon was taxing the people. And they said, hey, don't tax us like your father did. He didn't use wisdom. He said, nope, I'm going to tax you more and heavier. And so the 10 northern kingdom tribes of Israel left, and all he had was Judah and Benjamin. And so, other words, they said, we're gonna form our own kingdom. We're gonna have our own king, and they choose a guy named I'm probably gonna butcher his name, Jeroboam. Thank you, Isaac. Jeroboam. And so I always get his name wrong, but anyway. But he came king of the northern tribe of Israel. I think he was from the tribe of Manasseh, if I'm not mistaken, or one of them. But anyway, he came king, or Ephraim, one of the two, but he came king. And so the nation was split. between Judah and Israel, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. But what happened was at this time, he finally came king, and he took his father's spot. He came king of Judah. And they're about to battle it out right here. They're about to meet right here, and they're about to battle it out. They're about to have a great fighting battle here. And he stands on the hill, the king of Judah, and the army's behind him, and he's in front of this mountain, or he's on top of this mountain. He's in front of Israel, and he's about to talk to Israel, and he's about to give Israel a speech. And he tells Israel, he reminds them of the covenant that they abandoned God. And he says, y'all abandoned the true worship of God. Y'all rejected the priesthood. Matter of fact, y'all kicked the priesthood out. The Levites that were priests. So you kicked them out. Y'all took the law of Moses, the Levitical law, the worship of God, of the way Moses set it up, what God told Moses to set up. Y'all abandoned it. Y'all put new priests and y'all put priests, pagan priests, to over the tribe of Levi. Y'all kicked them out and put some other guys in there. They're pagan. And y'all put pagan idols into the northern kingdom. Y'all put calves, golden calves, and y'all made it convenient for the people and easier for them, where they didn't have to go to Jerusalem to worship. And so it was bad in the northern kingdom of Israel. They abandoned God. They maybe had, I believe they had some Jews that kept the Levitical law or served God. I'm not saying they were all worshiping idols, but as a nation as a whole, and the leadership as a whole, they abandoned God. And so they totally went pagan. So he's telling them here, hey, y'all abandoned the law of God. Y'all in darkness. Y'all pagans. Y'all left y'all in darkness. Y'all abandoned God. And he says, we Judah, we still go to the temple. We still kept the law of God. So we have God on our side. He says, y'all don't. So y'all can have the biggest army. Y'all have the biggest army, or the powerful army, but y'all got one weapon. Y'all don't have God. And we're going to get to that more later on as we get to the story. But he tells them all this. And he also tells them, David, so y'all left the house of David. David is your king, the line of David. Me and my great-grandfather David and Solomon and all these men, you belong to the house of David. Y'all rebelled and left. And he says, y'all pretty much what he was saying is, y'all should come back to the house of David. And so he's telling them all this speech, and he's standing up there, and he's reminding Israel of what they should be. And Israel was pretty upset, and so they said they were going to have ambushes around them, and they send ambush around Judah. And Judah was about to be destroyed. But then they did a battle cry. They cried out to God in faith, kind of like, what Israel did with the Jericho and the walls of Jericho. They shouted that was a shout of faith, and the trumpets were blown after that. So it was kind of similar kind of situation what happened here, where they shouted for faith, and they cried out to God for faith, and God heard their faith. God heard their trumpets, and God heard their voices of faith and trusting in him and calling out to him. So God honored that. God respected that. And God sent a supernatural victory to them. God gave them strength. And they went out there, and God sent a spirit of confusion into the northern armies of Israel, where they got confused and they started running away. And Judah's like, wow, God's given us a victory, so this is our chance. So they went out there, and they had supernatural strength, like Samson almost. They had supernatural strength. They went out there, and they fought like they were each 10 men. God gave them great victory that day over. And then Judah even expanded his borders, and so God gave, and they hurt the northern kingdom a little bit. They pretty much destroyed half of the army, if I did my research right. So God gave Judah a great victory that day. But there's two things I'm going to look at this story, that one is good and one is bad. And I'm going to give you the good part first. The good part of the story is that it can relate to us. A lot of times, like Judah, we feel, as Christians, we feel that we outnumbered. We feel like the world is at your doorstep. The world is attacking you. You're outgunned. You're outnumbered. You feel like there's more evil out there than good. I mean, they're surrounding you, ambushing you. You're attacked by the devil and his demonic forces, and the people who's guiding them, behind them, strengthening them. I mean, you feel like a lot of times, man, I'm outnumbered, I am outgunned. I mean, there's no way I'll be able to win this battle. The odds are too much against me, you know, and there's no way I can win this battle. And that's how Judah felt. Judah felt like, wow, we're outnumbered. Like right when they first got in the battlefield, they were probably, some of the soldiers were probably thinking, wow, we lost even before we even pull out our swords out and our spears, before we even go out there charging. We lost the war probably already because Israel outnumbered us 2-1, you know, or 3-1 or whatever. But God can turn an impossible situation to be a possible situation. You know, God took this and God said, you know, the army, yep, Israel is bigger than Judah. Yes, they got more manpower, but God said, I'm with them. You know, there's an old saying, and I like that old saying. It said, with God, all things are possible. And it said, if God is for you, who can be against you? So it don't matter how big your enemy is out there. It don't matter how many demons and how many fallen angels they got out there in the spirit world. No matter how much things you like in the physical is impossible, you're outnumbered and you're outgunned. But if God is with you, that's all you need. If God is with you and you have faith in God like Judah did, that's all you need. God is bigger than all those enemies you're facing, you know? So if you trust in God and you trust in him, he will supernaturally deliver you like he did with Judah. And so that is a good lesson for us right there, that when we feel like, hey, wow, you know, I feel like there's no way I can do it. And you're right. In your own strength, you can't. And your own human nature, you cannot do it. You cannot fight the devil and the spirit world and the demons, or even other human beings without God's divine supernatural strength and help. You know, if you read all the stories in the Bible, big, small armies, most of the time it was just one or two guys. And most of the time there's one guy. Like Samson, God moved upon Samson, gave him the strength of 10 men, and he defeated a whole Philistine army, you know. And he was outgunned and outnumbered and outweaponed, but with God with him, and there's so many cases. I can go just on hours of saying how God used ordinary men and weird weapons, but God helped these men, and they did great things. So I'm just saying that if you have God on your side and you have faith in God in a supernatural way, he'll deliver you from any addiction, anything, you know, you're being thrown your way, fear, doubt, discouragement, just people in general that come against you, like what happened in this situation with Judah. You know, God can deliver you. So I know that's encouraging, because a lot of times we do go through that. We feel like, wow, there's no way I'll be able to overcome this. And you're right what you're thinking, but you have a secret weapon on your side, and that's God. And that was Judah. Yes, Judah didn't have the biggest army in the world. In a natural human being perspective, in the natural mind, they didn't have a chance or a prayer. But God was with them, and God delivered them. So God can do the same for you and me and all of us. That applies to every human being on the planet, or every Christian that's here. Now, another point I want to get to the story is that the backslidden state of this king in Judah. You know, you were listening to the speech, the way this king of Judah was talking, and the way Judah acted when he gave this speech, and he rebuking Israel about their falsehood. And you will listen to them, how they blew the trumpet, and they screamed a great faith of joy, or a great warrior, you know, crying battle faith, warrior cry, I guess you can say. You would think, wow, Judah was right with God. Judah, the kingdom of Judah, was perfect. You know, it sounds like they got their house in order. Well, you'd be surprised that, yeah, they had the temple. Yeah, they had more light than the northern kingdom did. I mean, you know, they had the temple. They still read the law. I mean, they still had some gospel, as we would say today. They had some God, but they were not fully convinced with God, or they didn't fully, was not all the way right either. If you think about it, Judah was not what it should have been either. Judah was kind of half and half. Like, yeah, they worshiped God, but at the same time, they still went to the high places. They still worshiped their false gods. They maybe worship golden calves like the northern kingdom of Israel did, but they still worship foreign gods, fertility gods, and gods of whatever they were worshiping. So they were not all the way, right with God like they should have been. You know, so and this king either. If you look at the king, yeah, he made that great speech, but after that, he didn't really make no great reforms in Judah. He didn't like say, hey, let's get rid of our high places. Let's get rid of our idols. They're idols. They're made with man's hands. You never, if you read, I think in Kings, I think Second Kings, where they talked about the Chronicles of the Kings in there, and they were saying how he still did the sins of Solomon. He still followed the sins of his father. So he did not really, really he never really told Judah to repent. He never had a reform. He never did like the earlier Judah kings did. He didn't call them to totally, hey, let's totally go to the temple. Let's totally go to the Jewish law or the Moses law. Let's get away these idols and let 100% go to the one true God and serve him and him alone. He never did that. He never reformed Judah. Yeah, he enlarged the borders. Yeah, he did some great things and he made great speeches, but he never really sold out himself to God. He was totally divided. I was hearing about King Solomon. I heard a minister say this, and it still sticks to my mind to this very day. He said, before the kingdom was divided, Solomon was divided. So there's the same thing with this king. He was divided in his heart. He didn't fully give 100% to God. He didn't give his whole soul, his whole mind. Yeah, he knew the history. He knew his Bible. He knew about the covenant of Moses. He knew about the house of David, how God promised him and his seed will be on the throne forever. He knew his Bible, but he did not fully give up everything in his life. And same thing with Judah. They knew their Bible, but they did not fully surrender to God. And it's the same thing with a lot of people today. You could put a lot of people in that category, I guess you can say. A lot of people can fit this little book right here, this story. Because think about it, a lot of us Americans, just us Americans as Americans ourselves, well, a lot of us, we go to church. And there's a lot of us, like I heard one preacher say the other day, he's right. He said, not everybody goes to church are hypocrites. A lot of them really love God. Some are really devoting their whole heart and soul and mind. They thirst after righteousness. Like Jesus said, they hunger and thirst. They want to know God. They're giving their 100% of loving him and want to know his word. And they're not fake. They're not hypocrites and they're not fakes. They really love God and they really want to give and they're 100% to God. But sadly, there's a lot of them at the same time who are hypocrites, where they go in there, they sing the songs, they know the hymns, they know scripture verses. I mean, they can quote the Bible. I mean, you think they will all can be Sunday school teachers or teachers themselves. They know the Bible, they know the do's and the don'ts, but their heart is not 100% for God. When they get out the inside the church, they're a Christian, but when they get outside those doors, they're a whole different human being. They don't live it. They drink, they smoke. I mean, you wouldn't think they were Christians, the way they act. So there's a lot. So this can fit a lot of people's bill right here. A lot of people is like this king in Judah. Yeah, they go to church, but they're not really into God. They're not really, giving their 100% to him. They're more worried about other things, the worldly pleasures of the world. Their loyalty is more to themselves and worldly things than they are to God. So they don't give up the idols in their life. So he's a good example of how, yeah, he was like in modern terms, we will call him like a Christian. Yeah, he went to church. He knew the law. He knew his Bible. Judah did too. But if you read the rest, like most of the Second Kings, he followed the ways of the end of Solomon and his father, of worshiping other gods and everything. So I hope that's not you. I hope you're not like this king. Yeah, I hope you just don't go up the mountaintop and just preach the Bible and say all the right words. But saying something and living it, that's two different things. I mean, he was on that mountain. He was preaching like a preacher. He was, but he didn't live it. He's what he said and the way he did, that was two different things. Other words, his words didn't match with his actions. So I hope that's not you tonight. I hope you are those other kings of Judah, like Jehoshaphat and the other kings that they reformed Israel and they really tried to get Israel to God. So I hope you be like them, like King David, who his heart was really for God. The Bible said he had a heart after God. But this king, he said the right things, but he was not like his great grandfather David. He did not have the heart like he did. So he was half and half. So I hope this encouraged you tonight, and I hope you read this book, and I hope that you learn something from these two sides of the story. One part was encouraging, one part, was a bummer, I guess you can say, but that could fit a lot of people. And you're amazing when you read these books, how you see so much people, and even yourself, even me, into these stories. Our human nature, it's universal. This because we all can fit that bill in human nature, you know. So I hope you enjoyed this little sermon. I hope it was a blessing to you, and I hope it encourages you to read and I hope it encourages you to do your own Bible research and learn and dig into God's word. And I'm glad you enjoyed us tonight. And another thing too, I encourage you also read your Bible, but also if you love these little sermons that we do, or brothers are searching, please tell your friends and neighbors about us. That helps out so much. If you have a Facebook page or whatever page or platform you're on, it really helps if you tell your neighbors and friends or people who's on your platform. Tell them the word. Tell them, like, hey, there's a good program I found called Brothers Are Searching, or this program, and say, it's great. I learned a lot from it, and you'd be surprised how it can catch on. So word by mouth is another powerful advertisement. So I encourage you, please tell other people about us. It helps a lot, more than you realize. So thank you for enjoying us tonight for this little Bible study. And I hope you have a great night and hope you have a great weekend. Thank you and God bless.